You have been told your entire life to improve yourself, to add more discipline, more habits, more routines, more positivity, more structure, more control. You have been taught that evolution is something you build, something you stack piece by piece until one day you become the person you were meant to be. But what if that entire idea is wrong? What if the reason you feel stuck, the reason you keep circling the same problems, the same emotional patterns, the same internal resistance, is not because you haven't added enough, but because you have refused to remove what no longer belongs? Carl Jung spent his life studying transformation, not the performance of it, not the illusion of growth, but the real, uncomfortable process that changes a human being at their core. And what he discovered is something most people instinctively avoid. You do not evolve by becoming more, you evolve by letting parts of yourself die. And that is where the resistance begins, because death, even psychological death, is not something the mind accepts easily. You can wake up early, you can meditate, you can read books, you can repeat affirmations until your voice becomes noise in your own head. But the moment real transformation asks something of you, something irreversible, something that requires you to let go of an identity you have carried for years, suddenly growth feels different. Suddenly it feels threatening, because now it is no longer about becoming better, it is about becoming unfamiliar to yourself. The first part of you that must die is the version of you that needs to be seen as good. Not kind, not grounded, not principled. Good. There is a difference, and it is a difference that quietly controls your entire life. Think about how many decisions you make, not because they are right for you, but because they protect an image. You say yes when your instincts say no. You soften your words when truth demands sharpness. You tolerate what should be confronted. You smile when something in you is quietly tightening. And you call this maturity. You call this emotional intelligence. But what it often is fear. Fear of disapproval. Fear of rejection. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear that if people saw the full range of who you are, not the curated version, not the controlled version, not the socially accepted version, they would step back. So you perform. You become predictable. You become manageable. You become easy to categorize. And in doing so, you become easy to control. Because the moment your identity is tied to being perceived a certain way, anyone who can threaten that perception has leverage over you. A look, a comment, a shift in tone, and suddenly your behavior adjusts, not consciously, automatically. This is what Jung described as the persona, the mask that becomes so familiar you forget you are wearing it. And the longer you wear it, the heavier it becomes, because maintaining an image requires constant energy, constant monitoring, constant self-editing. You are not living freely, you are performing consistency. The death of this part of you does not feel empowering at first. It feels destabilizing, because when you stop performing goodness, you are forced to confront something deeper. You are forced to see that your kindness was sometimes compliance, that your patience was sometimes avoidance, that your understanding was sometimes self-betrayal. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. You begin to speak differently, not louder, but more precisely. You begin to choose differently, not impulsively, but honestly. And some people will not like that, because they were never connected to you. They were connected to the version of you that was easy for them to exist around. And when that version disappears, the relationship changes. This is the cost, but it is also the beginning of something real. The second part of you that must die is the one that needs to be needed. This one hides deeper because it disguises itself as virtue. You help, you show up, you listen, you carry, you fix. You become the one people rely on, and at first it feels meaningful. It gives you direction. It gives you identity. It gives you a sense of worth that feels stable. But look closer. Look at what happens when the people around you begin to stand on their own, when they no longer need your guidance, your support, your constant presence. Something shifts, and it is not always relief. Sometimes it is emptiness. Because if your identity is built around being needed, then independence in others feels like loss. You start to unconsciously gravitate toward people who are struggling, who are uncertain, who require something from you, not because you consciously choose it, but because it reinforces who you believe yourself to be, the helper, the strong one, the one who holds everything together. And Jung saw this pattern repeatedly. He called it the wounded healer, the person who tries to resolve their own unresolved pain by becoming essential in the lives of others. But this is not freedom. It is dependency in reverse. You are not free from others needing you. You are defined by it. And the danger is subtle, because the more you give without addressing the root, the more you avoid your own internal work. You stay busy solving external problems while your own patterns remain untouched. The death of this identity requires something most people resist: stillness, the willingness to step back, the ability to witness someone struggle without immediately stepping in, the courage to sit with your own discomfort instead of escaping into usefulness. And when you do this, something unsettling happens. You meet yourself without a role, without a function, without the validation that comes from being relied upon. And in that space, there is a question that cannot be avoided. Who are you when you are not needed? That question is not comfortable, but it is necessary, because your value cannot be built on dependency. It must be built on something internal, something stable, something that does not disappear the moment others no longer require you. The third part of you that must die is the one that needs to be understood. This one is exhausting, not because it is wrong to want connection, but because of how deeply you depend on it. Think about how much energy you spend explaining yourself, rephrasing your intentions, justifying your reactions, trying to make someone see what you see, feel what you feel, understand what you meant. And when they don't, it lingers, it stays with you, it replays, it becomes something you carry long after the moment has passed. But here is the truth that shifts everything. Most people will never fully understand you, not because they don't care, but because they cannot access your internal world the way you do. They do not have your history, your associations, your interpretations, and when your reality depends on their ability to validate it, you become unstable. Your clarity becomes conditional, your confidence becomes negotiable, your identity becomes something that requires constant external confirmation. Jung understood this as a lack of internal authority, the inability to stand in your own perception without needing agreement. And the death of this pattern is quiet but profound. It is the moment you say what is true for you without needing to defend it endlessly. It is the moment you walk away from a conversation knowing you were not understood and still feel grounded. Not because you don't care, but because your reality does not collapse without recognition. And this changes your relationships. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing closure in every interaction. You stop needing every conversation to end in alignment. And in doing so, you create a different kind of presence, one that is calm, one that is certain, one that does not demand to be validated to exist. And that kind of presence is rare, because most people are still negotiating their identity in every interaction they have. The fourth part of you that must die is the version of you that lives in potential, not your potential, other people's. This is one of the most painful patterns to release because it feels like hope. You see what someone could be. You see who they might become. You see the version of them that is healed, aware, consistent, present, and you hold on to that image. You invest in it. You build emotional attachments around it. and you stay not because of who they are, but because of who you believe they will become. But Jung was clear about this. When you relate to someone based on potential instead of reality, you are not in a relationship with them. You are in a relationship with your projection. And projections are powerful because they are fueled by your own needs, your need for stability, your need for connection, your need for meaning. You are not seeing them clearly. You are seeing what you need them to be. And the cost of this is time, energy, emotional investment in something that is not grounded in what is actually present. The death of this pattern is not intellectual, it is emotional. It requires grief, real grief, the kind that comes when you accept that the version of someone you believed in does not exist in the way you needed it to. And once that grief moves through you, clarity replaces it. You
begin to see behavior for what it is, not what it could become. You begin to make decisions based on what is consistent, not what is promised. You stop negotiating with reality, and that changes everything. Because clarity is not cold, it is liberating. It allows you to choose your environment, your relationships, your direction based on truth, not hope. The fifth and final part of you that must die is the identity built around your wounds. This is the most difficult because it is the most justified. You have been through things, experiences that shaped you, affected you, left marks that are real. Acknowledging that matters. Understanding it matters. But there is a line that is easy to cross without realizing it. The moment your past becomes your identity. When everything you do, every decision you make, every limitation you accept is filtered through what happened to you, you are no longer processing your past. You are living inside it. And Jung observed this carefully. He saw people who understood their wounds deeply, who could articulate them clearly, but were still organized around them. Their identity was built on what they had been through. And here is the uncomfortable truth. There is safety in that identity. It explains things. It justifies hesitation. It provides a framework that makes life predictable. But it also limits you. Because as long as your past defines your present, your future is already decided. The death of this identity is not about denying your experiences. It is about integrating them. It is about reaching a point where your past is something you carry, not something that carries you. Where it exists as part of your story, but not the center of it. And that shift is powerful, because it moves you from reaction to authorship, from being shaped to shaping. And when all 5 of these parts begin to dissolve, something unfamiliar emerges. Not a perfect version of you, not a polished version, but a real one. One that does not perform to be accepted. One that does not depend on being needed. One that does not require constant validation. One that sees reality clearly. One that is not defined by its past. This is not an easy process. It is not quick. It is not comfortable. It feels like loss before it feels like freedom. But this is what real evolution looks like. Not adding more to who you are, but removing what was never truly you to begin with. And in that removal, something undeniable takes shape. Clarity, control, direction. And once you experience that, even briefly, you understand something most people never do. That the path forward was never about becoming more. It was about finally letting go. You don't need another breakthrough. You don't need another method, another affirmation, another voice telling you what you already feel but haven't acted on. What you needed was this: clarity sharp enough to cut through the noise, truth heavy enough to force a decision. Now you've seen it. You've seen the masks you've been wearing. You've seen the patterns that have been quietly controlling you. You've seen the parts of yourself that feel like identity, but are actually limitation. And here's the line most people never cross. Awareness is not transformation. Most people stop here. They nod, they reflect, they feel something shift for a moment, and then they go back. Back to the same reactions, back to the same attachments, back to the same comfortable versions of themselves that are quietly destroying their potential. But if you've actually been paying attention, you already know. You can't go back to sleep after seeing this. Because now, it's not confusion anymore. It's a choice. A choice between staying who you've been or becoming someone unfamiliar, sharper, more honest, more dangerous in the way Jung described, not to others, but to illusions, to self-deception, to everything false inside you. Understand this clearly. Nothing leaves your life until you are willing to let it die. Not slowly fade, not be managed, not be negotiated with. Die. The version of you that needs approval, the version that hides behind being good, the version that clings to wounds for identity, the version that waits to be understood before it moves, the version that sees potential instead of reality. All of it, gone. And what replaces it is not perfection. It's not some enlightened, flawless state. It's something far more powerful. It's truth. A version of you that doesn't need to perform. A mind that doesn't bend under pressure. A presence that isn't easily shaken, manipulated, or distracted. The kind of person who walks into a room and doesn't need validation because they are already anchored within themselves. That is what real evolution looks like. Not louder, not flashier, just unshakable. So here's the only question that matters now. Are you actually ready to let those parts of you die, or were you just looking for something to agree with? If this hits something real in you, don't just sit with it. Act on it. Like the video so you lock this moment in. Subscribe if you're serious about thinking differently than the average mind. And share this with someone who is still stuck performing a version of themselves they've already outgrown. Because most people will hear this and do nothing. But a few, very few, will take this seriously. And those are the ones who change everything.